Proverbs.
We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 15 tonight. Now, I'm not going to get all the way through 15. I'm going to take it easy. So we're only going to go through verse 17. So if we get done early, we just going to have to live with it.
Why do you say that?
That'll be the day. Yeah.
Now it'll be 8:15.
Yeah, it'll be 8:20, 8:25 before we get
That
done.
will be the day.
So we're gonna be Proverbs chapter 15. So looking at these verses, we actually have what is considered by most observers of Proverbs to be a volume 1 and a volume 2 collection set. Okay? And so volume 1 is 15, 1 through 17, and volume 2 is actually starts in verse 18 and goes through chapter 16, verse 8. And we're not going to do volume 2 tonight, but these are partners, so it's kind of like they're repeating or covering the same information, and they're set up almost the same way. In fact, if we look at a synopsis or a outline of the first set of verses here, 15, 1 through 17, we've got, we're talking about a gentle versus harsh in speech, calming versus provoking anger, use of the tongue, divine retribution, foolish son, heeding admonishment, income of the righteous and the wicked, speech of the wise and the fools. I mean, you can just kind of look down through the list. And when we look at the volume 2, we see the same themes being covered in almost the same order as we go through that second set of scriptures. So it's really a very interesting part of Proverbs, these next few verses that we're going to look at tonight. Movie star. Hi.
That's Miss Sunglasses.
Yeah, Miss Sunglasses. So, okay, so let's, Proverbs 15 is going to start out with probably one of the most famous verses out of the Old Testament, and most of us know it, even if we don't employ it. From the King James, you would recognize it as a soft answer turns away wrath, right? And this has been used a lot, and it's an example of a de-escalation technique, right? And the idea here being that a wise person seeks to de-escalate or defuse. Now the difference is escalating, right? Throwing fire on the gasoline, throwing gasoline on the fire, right? And you've been involved in this, right? When you're young, when you're little, right? And you get into an argument, somebody makes a point, right? What is one of the things we do that kind of escalates things? Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Right? And said, sarcastically and tauntingly. And what does this do? It seems, oh, really?
Harmony.
Oh, harmony. Oh my goodness. What does it do? It inflames the other person, right? Now, what's the difference? Just a extra credit question. What's the difference between an argument and a debate or conversation? I just figured I'd point at somebody, see if I get. She just kind of looked at me and went, "Oh." What's the difference between a debate or a conversation with differing opinions and an argument?
An argument is when both of them think they're right. The
That's-
other ones have different opinions.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close. But an argument is generally a discussion or a debate
Yeah.
that has become inflamed with emotion.
Yeah.
Emotions have become a part of it. Now, what happens when emotion becomes part of the argument?
The husband loses the fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, see, I was going to say.
Win the argument. That's right. Yeah.
So perhaps tonight we should table this discussion. We should talk about marital relationships.
Jennifer actually told me one time that I was right, and I said, "Hang on, I got to get this on cell phone recording."
Oh no! See,
She said,
that's
no, we cannot have evidence of that. You know?
now what I was going to say is when emotion comes into the discussion, becomes an argument, and what do you have? You have the political situation in the United States government, because they're not making arguments based on reason and opinion now. They're making arguments based on emotion, right? And the emotional appeal, and you've got to learn to recognize this, the emotional appeal is intended to get you to quit thinking and react based on the emotion. That's a brave man right there. After that remark you made, you move up there next to her. Okay, so the idea here, though, is that a wise person holds in check their emotions. And we've seen, at this point in Proverbs, we are not covering really any new.
They can't handle
There
it.
was a mass
She could sit there if she
exodus.
wanted to.
I mean, everybody ran off the front row.
Because they're talking.
Did they offer free tickets?
I never said that.
So, for those of you watching at home, we have the teenagers in sanctuary tonight with us, and so there's a little bit of play going on back and forth here. I'm gonna have to watch that close. Got my eyes on you. I'm watching you. Your mama's gonna see this, and she's gonna go, "What were you doing up there?" Yeah, you're in trouble now.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Okay. The wise person de-escalates, right? They back away from an argument for the argument's sake. Right? Don't want to argue, want to talk, want to share, want to discuss. Okay. So let's look at Proverbs. We're gonna just read the first couple of verses here, and then we'll stop and discuss them. Let me get caught up on my paper slides. A gentle answer. And I'm reading out of, as you know, I've probably repeated myself in these last, how many months has it been?
What?
We have no idea. We've been lost count.
We lost count. It's been since January because I had a grandbaby born in January, and one of my first slides has got her picture on it. So the last 6 months that we've been studying Proverbs,
Kind of like Joe.
well, we're going to be here longer than Joe. So. A gentle answer. I'm reading out of the New Living Translation so that we don't have to struggle with the language. A gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Right? And boy, ain't that the truth. I mean, if the husband comes home and says something about the house not being clean, and then the wife says, "Yeah, and your mama dressed you funny," and the boy, here we go. It's all on then, right?
It's okay if both are true.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But, if you flip that around, if the husband came home and said, "You must have had a hard day, let me help you," this would diffuse the situation. If he was so insensitive as to make a remark like that, if the wife said, "You're right, I've had a hard day and I just wasn't able to get to it," who's going to feel like a heel? The husband.
Because the house wasn't clean.
Okay, you might want to move away from him. It's going to get you in trouble. A gentle answer deflects anger. You hear what I'm saying to you? A gentle answer deflects anger. Harsh words make tempers flare. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing. And this is a direct reference to not what gets said, but how it gets said.
Yeah.
Right?
Delivery is everything.
Delivery is everything. It's like the old businessman said, right? The most important thing in business is location, location, location. Well, here it's delivery, right? You can say the truth to somebody and say it in such a way as it inflames the situation, or you can ease into it and make a gentle remark. So the tongue of the
There's times when you say the right answer, tell the truth, and it still inflames.
well, that's true.
If she says, does this dress make me look fat? And you say yes,
That's why you got to be careful. Delivery is everything. That's what we're trying to tell you, but you ain't listening.
I'm gonna try.
You better be glad I'm between you and these women.
I got one of
You
them
may
at
not be
home.
glad.
So it always amazes me how long some of these husbands live, right?
They're faster than she is.
So the tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing, but the mouth of a fool belches out foolishness. Now that's quite an image, because a belch, you know what the difference between a belch and a burp is? And no, I'm not going to demonstrate.
Shayna would.
Decibels, that's true. Decibels, right? A burp is, oh, excuse me. And a belch is like, my God, what was that? Ho! What did you eat? Right? That's the difference. And so fools, this stuff just boils out of them without control. The Lord is watching everywhere, keeping his eye on both the evil and the good. So once again, as we have many other places in Proverbs, we're finding admonitions for wise speech. Now, this is something that is echoed by James. If you've ever read, I believe it's the 3rd chapter of James, he devotes nearly the entire chapter to what? The tongue. How little an organ it is in the body, and how huge a fire it can make, right? If it is not employed wisely. And just being right, are you listening?
yes, sir.
Just being right is sometimes not enough. You have to be right in the
Right, man.
right way. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes being right and saying I'm sorry will, what's the expression? Heap coals of fire, right? It works on them. So yeah, we play around a little bit and we laugh and we carry on, but pride, be careful. Listen to what I'm telling you. Pride, being right.
Jenny, when the girls were younger, the girls would come home and just, complain about this or that from school and everything. And Jenny would just say, look, 2 things. You got to let it roll off your back like water off a duck's feathers. And you got to be kind to them when they're being mean to you so you can heap hot coals. So as the girls got older, they would come home and complain some more. And Jenny would go, what I tell you, girls? She goes, we know, Mama.
Heap hot coals.
Heap hot coals.
And what that's a reference to is you basically turn their pride in on themselves, right? And because pride is really responsible. Pride is what makes us, when we're right, makes us want to let everybody else know that we're right. That's pride, right? If being right was all that mattered to you, you wouldn't care who knew because you'd know, right? I know I'm right. Everybody acknowledge that I am right. That's the point. That's the point. See, we have to, so a little side note here. I'm going to get just a little current political here. So one of the most infuriating issues that we're facing right now is with the, how can I put it, the ABLGF 101, whatever it is, right? The gay movements, right? They can't just say, okay, just leave me alone, let me answer to God. They've got to get in your face and make you not only acknowledge that they are different, but make you nod yes I support your lifestyle. Right? Well, that's something that we can't do. We cannot support that lifestyle. That doesn't mean I hate them. Right? And it doesn't mean that I would not speak with them. Tell them, Jesus loves you just like he loved me. There's no sin that cannot be forgiven. Right? If there is no hope for you, then there is no hope for me. We got to really get that down. We like to walk around and act like, well, we all that because we righteous. You weren't righteous because of what you did. And if there's no hope for you, there is no hope for me.
We're righteous because of that cross.
That's right. That's righteous. Not me. So, but pride makes you want to force everyone to acknowledge you and your position. And so that's where pride becomes an issue. The wise person here is taught not to inflame the situation. A gentle answer turns away wrath. Okay? So yeah, you may be right. You may be right and then some. But if you are, time will prove your point. And then you can give it the whole I told you so bit very humbly. Right? You can be like, well, gee, I wish somebody had told us that before. Oh, wait. Right? So that's what I'm saying is a gentle answer. Right? Don't let pride inflame the situation. Don't let emotion, which is what pride is, an emotion. Don't let that get in the way. Emotion's fine. We have those. We're human. God gave them to us. But we tend to run them all the way out to the end, right? Instead of hold them in check.
It can't be your compass. It can't be your compass.
Right.
It cannot be your guide.
If it is your compass, it turns you in circles. Because that's what a compass does. It makes us. No. Oh, come on. Give me. No, they're not even listening back there. Okay. I was going to say, they're in school geometry.
You're being right with that. You were very wrong with that.
I was very wrong with that? Sure, okay. Fine. Whatever. Okay. So verse 4, gentle words. Now remember, we've been talking about a gentle answer deflects anger. Harsh words make tempers flare. Did you bring something for everybody? No? Oh, okay. Gentle words are a tree of life. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Crushes the spirit. Now, this is the second time that the word gentle has gotten used here. Now, the meanings, even though it comes through the English as gentle, the meanings are a little bit different here. In the first verse, it is exactly what you'd expect it to be. Tender, pertaining to an attitude or behavior which is not harsh. Okay? As a positive moral quality or a kindness or responsiveness. Soft. Gentle. Okay? But in verse 4, this is not what this means. In verse 4, the word is medicine or a cure. Figuratively, it can mean deliverance. Okay? So let's. I'm going to back up here just real quick. I'll just back up here. Okay, there we go. So let's look at it again. So a gentle answer deflects anger. And that gentle is pertaining to an attitude or a behavior which is not harsh, kindness or responsiveness. A soft answer, right? Soft answer. And then we have verse 4, gentle words are a tree of life. It's not talking about soft or non-harsh words being a way of life, but it's talking about curative, medicinal words. Now, think about medicinal, right? There are two types of medicine. There is the medicine that is, how can I put it? I'm not up on my medical terms, but you put it on, it keeps you from getting an infection, and you got to put it on every so often. And then there's the kind of medicine that's got to be just a little sharp, right? The appendix has got to come out, right? We got to go in there and cut it out because it's gone bad, and that's kind of painful, right? That is some very aggressive medicine. The idea here is that the tree of life they're talking about, the words that they're talking about, are corrective words. Okay? Sermons, messages from the pulpit, some scriptures that we read. These are words that are intended to correct our thinking, our lifestyle, our behaviors, and sometimes these can be hard to deal with, right? To be told you are wrong, your thinking is wrong, your behavior is wrong, your morals are wrong, that can be quite a shock. But also to be told that Jesus died for your sins, right? He loves you. And while you may have an issue, it is not a fatal issue, right? These are all medicinal healing words. So if I come to you with gentle words as a tree of life, I might perhaps be criticizing you. Might be saying, I really shouldn't dress that way. That's a little bit too much, or not enough. Yeah. Okay. You should have considered your tone of voice before. I used to tell my kids all the time, they snap at their mama. Well, I'm gonna tell them something, they'd snap. Now, as daddy in the house, right? I was very sensitive to that, and I'd bark at them. Hey.
My daddy would bite.
I got 3 of them back there. This one. But I would bark at them, and they would look at me like, "What? What did we do wrong? What did we do wrong?" They didn't have a clue. I said, "Tone. Your tone was inappropriate." Well, I didn't think it doesn't matter. I thought tone was inappropriate, and sometimes that's the way we are, right? God's got to bark at us a little bit, get our attention. In my case, that usually involves a 2x4 in the side of my head. Ping! Hello? Hey, God's on the phone. What did you want? So he gives gentle words, corrective words. These are the tree of life. Okay? But look at the opposite, deceitful tongue. I'm going to tell you something. There's an old story an evangelist used to tell. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it involved a guy that went to church all his life, and the pastor always told him, you're fine, Jesus loves you, you're fine. He died, and he went to hell. And as he was going through hell, he was walking on the heads of everybody else in the lake of fire, and he was lifting up their heads, throwing them down, lifting them out of the fire, and throwing them down. Finally, Satan asked him, "Who are you looking for?" He said, "I'm looking for that preacher who told me I was okay." Deceitful words.
Yep.
Deceitful words will crush a spirit. We don't have to be mean. We do have to be truthful. We don't have to be harsh, but we have to be real. Sometimes harsh gets an attention, right? But we have to be real. And one of the things in society today is that Christians have become convinced that we can't tell the hard truth. Right? We can't say that. We have to say that. We don't have to be mean about it, but we do have to say it. So gentle words are a tree of life. Deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Let's see, this is all where we were. Medicine or cure. Since the second half of the verse deals with deceitfulness, what we find here is the precursor to what Paul taught us in Ephesians 4:15, speaking the truth in love. Love is the most important aspect, right? You can't go to somebody and give them bad news and hate them, right? You have to love them. If you love them, then what's the expression my dad used to use every time I got a spanking?
I'm
This
doing
hurts
this for
me
your
more.
own good.
This
No.
will hurt me
More than it hurt
Yeah.
you.
more than it hurt
This is going to hurt me. And I was like, there is no
Yep.
way.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true.
Until I had kids.
Yep.
And I would have done anything other than have to spank them.
Yep.
Because I'll never forget. Now, again, a spanking is one thing. But when Rachel was little bitty, she broke a knick-knack. Now, it was a knick-knack that my grandmother had, right? So it had been passed down. It was on its way to becoming a family heirloom, and in just a matter of seconds, it became trash, right? It was a little glass something. And I hollered at her, and she melted right there in front of me. And that's when it became obvious to me. She was 4. It became obvious to me how fragile they were. And while I needed to correct her, she was playing with something she should have been playing with, I crushed her instead. And God got all over me. He said, in 100 years, no one will remember that glass knick-knack, but that yell, that bark that will echo through your grandchildren and their children's ears for years.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, gentle words, gentle answers, okay? So speaking the truth in love would have been much better for me to just set her down and say, baby, because, spankings sometimes are warranted, but sometimes they're not. I told AJ one time I was disappointed in him, thought I'd scarred him for life. I said, son, that action has disappointed me. He melted into tears right there in front of me. I had to hold him, and oh my goodness gracious, but that's all it was needed. That's all it was needed. Spanking would have been too much. There were other times when you had to go there, right? You just had to go there.
And when I spanked them, I waited a little while and let it soak in. Then I go back and tell them how much I love them.
Mm-hmm.
That I did it.
But it's soaked in all right.
That hickory paddle.
Down to the 8th layer of my rump skin.
Also, reference John 8:32. Jesus said to us, the truth shall make you free.
Yes.
If you know the truth, even if it's hard to take, there's freedom in that. And so those are the words of life that he's talking about, right? Nobody likes to hear that they're worthless, but sometimes you've got to hear it. Nobody likes to hear that you could have handled that better. Your reaction was a little over the top or a little wrong. Nobody wants to hear that, but these are the words of life, and they got to be said in love. Okay? All right. So taken then all together, wise words spoken softly, tenderly, motivated by love, will calm a situation, provide correction, and make free, as opposed to crushing, the soul who hears them. Okay? So, moving on, looking at verse 5. Where did I go here? Lost my place.
You have one behind you as well.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Only a fool despises a parent's discipline. Whoever learns from correction is wise. Oh, that would make our pastor a very wise individual, because he was corrected a lot,
But
apparently.
it took him a while.
It took him a while.
Yeah,
Well, there's no time frame here.
I got to take scroll.
Learned on the
So-
curve.
There's treasure in the house of the godly, but the earnings of the wicked bring trouble. The lips of the wise give good advice. The heart of a fool has none to give. So, as we look at this, right, taking these 3 verses in total, godly parents who rely on God's wisdom have and pass down a treasure of inestimable value to their children. If you're endowing your children with the principles you're learning from the Bible, you don't have to be perfect. Look, none of us are perfect. Okay? Some of us are less so, but none of us are perfect. It doesn't matter. If God expected perfection, we wouldn't make it. Right? That's why Paul would say in the New Testament, I press toward the mark. I have not yet achieved, but I reach for that mark. I have a goal. My goal is to be perfect, but I understand that I will never be perfect.
From the pen of the man who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament.
2/3 of the New Testament. And we talked a little bit about this Sunday, right? Paul had something that bugged him, just drove him nuts. He couldn't take it. God said, no. Jesus said, my grace is sufficient for thee, right? I'm going to cover this with grace. Did you see my... Yeah. So I posted on my wife showed me something. I said, yeah, it serves me right for talking about is basically Paul's in prison and he's writing that deal and SpongeBob is in chains next to him.
His SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah. So Thorn was SpongeBob SquarePants, right? So, but godly parents who rely on God's wisdom, okay, they pass down treasure. That's unimaginable. Okay, it is something that, we learn. If we train up a child, he will what when he is old? He will not depart from it. He comes back to it. This is where they're going to go. Now, also, we see the learning of wisdom should start at home. Now, remember, when we talk about wisdom, what is wisdom? Okay, the beginning of wisdom is what? The reverence, the fear of the Lord. We have no wisdom in and of ourselves. Okay? That's why we have the book of Proverbs. Proverbs teaches it. Everything you know that you think is smart, that came from somebody, grandfather, great-grandfather, quote by Abraham Lincoln, Will Rogers, didn't come from them. They may have said it a famous way, and I've got a quote in here that we'll get to in a minute, but it came from the Bible. God is the originator of wisdom. Okay? If we truly wanted to credit the author, they always when you write something down or when you say something, you're always supposed to say, now, Abraham Lincoln said this, right? If we truly wanted to credit the author when we spoke these little pearls of wisdom, we would say, this was said by God. But our pride won't let us, right? Oh, no, I said that, Oh, I'm going to quote Will Rogers, because I can't quote God. That would be... No, God said that. God is responsible for all of our wisdom and a lot of the quotes that we think somebody else said, he said first. But teaching about God and about God's wisdom should start at home. Now, there are over 30 verses that deal with parents teaching their children of God or about God. I like this one, Deuteronomy 1:11-9. That's a little small, but therefore you shall love the Lord your God and keep his charge, his statutes, his judgments, and his commandments always. Knowing today that I do not speak with your children. Now, get this. God says, you've got to keep my commandments. Everything I said, keep it, live it. And I know I'm not speaking with your children who have not known and who have not seen the chastening of the Lord your God, his greatness and his mighty hand and his outstretched arms. So they don't know me. They haven't seen me. Now, God is speaking to the children of Israel who came out of Egypt. Okay? So they witnessed the parting of the Red Sea, the manna in the desert, the pillar of fire by night, the pillar of smoke by day, the water pouring out of the rock. Did I say the manna on the ground?
Yeah.
The honey,
The quail.
the honey in the comb, the bees buzzing around. Where's Charlotte when you need her? So he said, they haven't seen all of this, but you have. You've seen it. You've seen the miracles in your life, especially those of you who are parents to young children. You've seen God work in your life. They don't know.
You got to tell them about it.
You got to tell them about it. And that's what he goes on. He says, his greatness his mighty hand, his outstretched arm. Verses 3 through 17 in this passage. It's a list of all the miracles for the last 40 years. And he continues in verse 18. He says, therefore, now listen, you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul. Bind them as a sign on your hand. They shall be frontlets between your eyes. In other words, they'll be hanging right here. Okay? You shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And what God intended here is that God and His lessons, His wisdom, His scriptures should be such a part of our life that they just come out of us. And we're talking about Bible when we lay down to go to sleep. We're talking about Bible when we get up. God said this, God said that. We talk about God when we're on a walk. When we sit down to eat dinner, we're talking about God. I've told this story many times, but I'm going to tell it again. So there. So way back in the day when I was a young man, I was getting ready to move into my place, and I had to have a pole to set my electric on when I was getting ready to move a trailer out there, and I had to have temporary electric, I had to have a pole. Now, those of you who know me know I can't do anything small. Okay? So most people would go get a 4x4, about like that. They would plant this 4x4 in the ground, they'd put their meter loop on it, and then they would have the power company come out and hook it up, right? No, I can't do that. I got to go find a lumber surplus place where they had timber that was used as cribbage in a barge. And I find an 8x8 creosote post 20 feet long. And it's broken on both ends. I don't know how long it was when it started. I took a chainsaw and I flattened off both ends and I set that thing, and I dug a hole with a pair of post hole diggers. These manual ones like this. until the post hole diggers were about that far below ground. I was digging it out, get them out of there, right? And of course, I had to make the top of the hole a little bit wider. Well, as I was digging it, it starts to rain, and I mean, not just a gentle shower; it's pouring down, and I'm like, "Oh, Lord, how am I going to get this done?" And I swear to you, it's as plain as I'm speaking to you now. God said, you let me worry about the rain, you worry about the hole. So I'm digging this hole. And I get it dug. And I lift this pole up, and I'm by myself. And I've got, this huge 20-foot pole. And I lift this thing up, and I get it up on my shoulder, and I walk it up, and I bear hug it, and I pick it up, and I drop it in that hole, and it drops about that far. And it won't go no further. And I grab a hold of it, and this wind is blowing, and I'm kind of, and I'm fighting with it, and it's trying to go this way and go that way. And I'm like, oh God, please, if I drop this, I will never pick it up again. I'm exhausted. I mean, I dug this hole, and it's all I can do to lift this post, like I'm telling you. And I finally get it where it's kind of steady, and I'm leaning on it because I really can't hold it up. And all of a sudden, that post starts to twist. And I'm like, oh no, I'm losing it. And I've got a hold of it, and I'm trying to keep it, and it's twisting, and I can't hold it. And it twists around like that, and just as it gets where I think, okay, it's going to fall, and I jump back, right? Because I'm just convinced that I'm losing it, and it goes down in the hole. Now, you say what you want.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, God reached down there with his finger and put his finger on it, twisted it around. And so I put it all in I tamped all that back in there. And I drug my tired butt back to the truck and drove home. And I came out there the next weekend, and I drove in the little driveway thing that I had there, and I looked, and there's that pole. And I thought, what is that?
That pole would have been leaning.
Oh my! I'm gonna have to dig it all up. And God spoke to me again. He said, "Don't you touch that pole." I put that pole in the ground. He said, "You will leave it there."
Yeah.
And when the guy came out to hook up my service, you know what he told me? He said, "That's pretty smart." He said, "Not many people know to do that." I said, "What?" I had it leaning away from the direction of the service drop.
Oh, nice.
And he goes, "Yeah, not many people know to do that, but they usually stand them straight up, and I hook them up, and then over a couple of years, it kind of drags them over." He said, "You're leaned just about right. I'm gonna hook that up." He said, "That's gonna last a long time."
Wow.
Yeah.
When we moved into the house, and we got all that disconnected, got that old trailer out of there, my kids would go in there and they go, "Daddy, why don't you cut this pole down?" I'm like, "Ooh." No, let me tell you the story about how God takes care of you, about how God will work in your life, about God with his little finger can deliver you from your problems. Now you say, "Oh, well, not to me it wasn't." Not to me it wasn't. And God said, "I want you to teach your children what you have seen that God has done for you." Right? Even if it's, look, your daddy wasn't always the man you see now. Once he was worthless, and look what God has done with him. Right? To which the wife should be going, "Amen to that." Okay. Advice from a wise person, or someone who believes in, studies the Bible, and lives what they learn, therefore, is good. But from a person who has no such belief, their advice is empty. Empty. You can't get good advice from somebody who does not believe in God. If you get good advice from somebody who does not believe in God, I'm going to tell you they're repeating something that started from God. Okay? So, looking at verse 8 through 11, the Lord detests the sacrifice of the wicked, but he delights in the prayers of the upright. The Lord detests the way of the wicked, but he loves those who pursue godliness. Whoever abandons the right path will be severely disciplined. Whoever hates correction will die. Even death and destruction hold no secrets from the Lord. How much more does he know the human heart? If you were here 2 Sundays ago, you know all about the human heart. Wonderful preacher came in here, taught us all about the human heart. Well, it's not last Sunday, but it's Sunday before. That's 2 Sundays. I thought he was going to blurt out the name of that wonderful.
I just had something to say.
Okay, so now in verse 8 we see the word detest. Detest is a strong word. It means repulsive, disgusting, etc. I have a story for that. I'm one of those guys. This is my calling, is the telling of a story. So how many of y'all have had chickens? So let me tell you something about a chicken. A chicken has absolutely no inhibitions. They will poop wherever the mood strikes them, and apparently the mood strikes them an awful lot.
Yep.
So you will go out and there will be chicken, and it is nasty, runny. Oh, turn your stomach. And there'll be little poop piles just everywhere, just because they'll poop 5 times walking down the driveway. So Everly comes out. She's hollering at me, and I'm walking over there, and she comes down the porch. She's walking for me, and she stops. And she's at that age where rocks are important.
Oh, no.
Right? She'll pick up a rock. Oh, rock, 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 right? And so she stops, and she looks, and she points, and looks at me, and she points, and she goes, "Poop!"
Oh, thank goodness.
I said, "Oh, is that chicken poop?" And she goes, not kidding you, she goes, "Poop, Papa, poop!" Blah! Detest is a strong word.
Yep.
All right, get the idea? Okay. It means repulsive, disgusting. It means bleh. Okay? God says he detests the sacrifice of the wicked. What is the sacrifice of the wicked? What do you think the sacrifice of the wicked is? This is one of those built-in
I'd say
moments
they're
where I
sold.
get something to drink and y'all think. Go ahead, what?
I'd say they're sold. They're sacrificing their soul.
Okay. What else? What do y'all think? Sacrifice of the wicked. So,
Y'all don't be bashful.
yeah, don't.
I mean, really, there's nothing that comes to mind. So.
Okay, so remember, with Proverbs, most of the Proverbs are comparators, right?
Yeah.
So the first half says one thing, and the second half shows you the opposite.
Yeah.
And the second half sometimes explains the first half.
Right.
So if the sacrifice of the wicked, the second half of that verse is delights in the prayers of the upright. So what is the sacrifice of the wicked? Well, perhaps
I'm not praying.
it's going to church on Easter, but never any other time. Right? Showing up once a year, like, oh, this is good enough, but never, oh, I thought you were telling me I was something
My
wrong.
brain was kind of working there. I didn't even know today was Wednesday. That's how far my brain's been working. But the sacrifice of which to me means for that time and period, it'd be the people that are bringing their lambs, kind of like Cain did. Yeah, I don't remember which one. I'm going blank now. But they're just sinners all day long. They're not going to change their life even after they provide their sacrifice to the temple.
Promise to reform if God gets you out of this fix. Right? Oh yeah, God, I'm going to change. Just get me out of this.
Yeah.
Right? Any of those of you who ever led the party life know what that is like the morning after.
Yes.
I will never, just let me survive and I will never do this again. Yeah, right. Right? Or asking God to fix this or that while leaving your heart untouched. Right? I want God to jump into this, but I don't want to give up my whole heart. Right? I don't want to surrender that. I've had a lot of people come to me and go, my wife, my husband, whatever, we're having trouble and I need you to give me some advice. And I would try it. I would give them, you've got to, love your spouse, right? It can't be a contract. A lot of people treat God that way, right? If I go to church on Easter, then you have to bless me. If I do this, if I obey the 10 Commandments, you have to honor me. I don't have to do anything, right? You ought to be doing it because you like to do it. You want to do it. It's good for you, right? Give you a better life, but not to win favor from God. You won favor from God. He already sent His Son. But I would try to help. I would try to say, well, marriage, you can't keep score. You got, and give them all this advice. One day I heard, I mean, y'all know Pastor Adrian Rogers. Y'all ever hear him on the radio? So yeah, you hear him. He's been gone for 20 years, and they're still running his sermons. They're that good. And he said the same thing. Caught my attention. He said the same thing. He's like, I was a young pastor, and I was trying to. People come for marriage counseling, and I'd lay out the biblical principles of marriage. How your husband's supposed to be, how your wife's supposed to be, how to treat the children, blah blah blah. And he said, and I got to noticing it wasn't working. And I couldn't figure out why these people's lives were just going from bad to worse, but yet I was giving them all this good, godly wisdom. He said, God finally told him. He said, my wisdom don't work for them that don't honor me. They're coming in to fix the marriage, but they won't let me into their hearts. Right? I got to fix their heart before I can fix their marriage. It does you no good to explain to somebody a godly principle for living to help fix their life if Jesus isn't a member of their heart. I had one, it absolutely blew me away. It was completely unexpected. And I said, so I had taken that to heart. I said, so let me just start off the conversation with, do you know Jesus, your Lord and Savior? Because if you don't, none of the rest of this is going to matter. And the person was like, no, and I think that's my problem. And I was like,
First sign.
amazingly, right? But it drove home to me, you don't do anything to bring somebody to Christ. Christ is doing that.
Mhm.
You're just there to help interpret the map,
Yeah.
right? That's what this means on the map. God is calling people to Him, all right? Okay, again, we see the word detest, and we see it contrasted with believer. He detests the sacrifice of the wicked, delights in the prayer of the upright, detests the way of the wicked, loves those who pursue godliness. Okay? So these things are repulsive to God, the wicked, but He delights and He loves those who are chasing after Him. And remember, I said we don't have to have achieved, but we do have to be an honest and fully engaged pursuit, right? Not lackadaisical, but I mean laser focused. Just think about that girl or that guy that you're married to now when you first met them, right? How you laser focused, right? You pursued them. John's like, yeah, that's right. She pursued after me. Now,
No, I can't pursue.
verse 10. And let me just back up. Verse 10, whoever abandons the right path will be severely disciplined. Whoever hates correction will die. Verse 10 isn't talking about the wicked. It's talking about the believer who's turned away. Hebrews does that too. Hebrews talks about the one who's been in the life and then walked away from it. Right? And it's very, very difficult for them. Right? And here Proverbs is saying, yeah, if you've been a part of it and you're walking away. Now, let me just correct this real quick for us. We're not talking about somebody who has become negligent, right? We all know those people, right? Where you used to go to church all the time, and then they had a job and kids, and they just got out of the habit of going to church, and so their lives have gone a little that. The Baptists used to call that backsliding. A little backslider there, a little backsliding action. Now we're talking about somebody who knows, who understands, and then speaks against it. Oh, that church is a racket. No, you can't believe all that stuff. All that stuff is a lie. That's what it's talking about here when it says, whoever abandons the right path will be severely disciplined. It's talking about, remember, God starts easy, right? Easy corrections. Aim small, miss small, right? So it's easy correction. No, you're not too far off the path. Let me get you back on. Let me get you back on. But when you get headstrong and you turn to go the other way, God basically pulls His hands off of you. Let's Satan have you. Finally, verse 11 it says, God knows the worst things, death and destruction, so well. The human heart is no mystery to Him. And we talked about the human heart, right? What's in the human heart? It's all bad. God's got to wash that out. How many of y'all, just curious, thought just occurred to me. How many of y'all growing up ever had your mother wash your mouth out with soap? Yep. Now, you notice mothers would do that. Fathers would never wash your mouth out with soap. They would wash it out with the back of their hand. But your mother would wash your mouth out with soap. God sometimes got to wash us out. God sometimes He's got to clean us up. Okay. So running the last few verses we got. Mockers hate to be corrected, and so they stay away from the wise. A glad heart makes a happy face. A broken heart crushes the spirit. A wise person is hungry for knowledge, but the fool feeds on trash. For the despondent, every day brings trouble. For the happy heart, life is a continual feast. Better to have little with the fear of the Lord than to have great treasure and inner turmoil. A bowl of vegetables with someone you love is better than steak with someone you hate. So we've seen mocker all through the first 15 chapters. And you remember the word means scorn, scorn formally, talk big, speak words with no respect for an object or a person, make fun of. That's a mocker, right? And so they cannot stand in the presence of wisdom, right? Because it proves them wrong. You don't have to run the bragger off. He'll leave on his own. And he'll leave on his own because, A, he can't convince you he's right, and B, in the court of public opinion, you won't have to do much arguing to show who's wrong, right? Now, there's an old saying, and going back to look at a glad heart makes a happy face. A broken heart crushes the spirit. There's the crush again. There's an old saying, it's been used by many folks in various iterations, but I think Dr. Albert Schweitzer said it best. At 20, you have the face God gave you. At 40, the face life gave you. At 60, you got the face you deserve. And so what that means, especially if we look back at our scripture, right? A happy heart, a glad heart makes a happy face, right? You've seen these people that are in their elder years, and their faces is just, you could just look at them and go, man, that person's had a hard life. They're unhappy or bitterness. It's just all over them. And that's what this is talking about. And again, Dr. Schweitzer, Abraham Lincoln said a version of this. At 20, you notice almost everybody is beautiful at 20. Perfect little angels. Especially as you get older, you can look back. You can look at somebody, around you, somebody who's in their very, very early 20s, and you're like, they're babies. They don't have any life on them. Notice that? No experience.
Yeah.
Nothing. By the time you're 40, life has put its mark on your face. By the time you're 60, your heart and what you believe, the hope that you have or do not have, has put its mark on your face. And so our faces become, we see those people that they always seem to be happy. That's coming from the heart. Okay? So crushed here again, we've seen crushed a couple of different times. Crushes the spirit. Just as in verse 4, this implies ruination. Right? Ruins. You know what is unique about ruins? It's never built up again. You go to the ruins in Greece, they're still ruins, right? They're not, it's not, if you sweep it all away and you build up again, there are no ruins there. You built it again. Ruins are abandoned, broken and abandoned, okay? And so when we talk about the crushed heart, a broken heart crushes the spirit. I've seen that happen. I had a very good friend of mine, and I watched his heart break. And I saw, now he never gave up faith in Christ, but it crushed his spirit. And there is a ruination. It was a ruination. I read this proverb now, and I'm like, yeah, I get that. There's some imagery here for verse 14. A wise person is hungry for knowledge, while the fool feeds on trash. Right? And if you just think, there's a difference between reading works of wisdom and junk food. Right? What is it that your mamas always tell y'all? No junk food, right?
You are what you eat.
Too early to eat?
No, you are what you eat.
Oh, you are what you eat. Right. You are what you eat. That's what this verse is talking about. You are what you eat. So I read a testimonial. How many of y'all know who Dr. Ben Carson is? He was in the news here not too long ago, several years. Very famous neurosurgeon, black guy. He was born in the ghetto in Detroit. His mother was married at 13 and divorced with 2 children and raised them by herself. When they were little, she realized what was going on. She came home one day and she told them this. Now, she was a church-going woman. And what she said is she had come to realize with her elementary school education, she was not a very educated person, but she'd come to realize that in the houses of all the rich people she cleaned for, that was what she did to make a living, the difference between the people that lived around her and the people that she worked around was they read books. She came home, turned the TV off, told her 2 little boys, you will read 3 books a month and you will write a report on them. And you are only allowed to watch 3 programs a week. Now, they didn't have such thing as video games. So perhaps you might say you only get 3 hours of video game a week, but you will read a book. And he said he remembers the moment that it happened because he had just had a math test in the 3rd grade and he got 0 out of 10 questions right. By the time he was in the 7th grade, he was in the top of his class.
It makes a difference.
Knowledge, particularly God's wisdom, right, feeds the soul. Don't eat the junk food. Don't eat the worthless stuff, the TV program. Make sure you have a well-balanced diet. Okay. Verses 15 and 16 are precursors to Jesus' admonition in Matthew 6, 19 and 20, right? He talks about happy heart, life is a continual feast. Better to have little with fear of the Lord than to have great treasure in turmoil. Lay not up for yourselves treasure upon the earth where moth and rust does corrupt, thieves break through and steal. Rather lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Don't focus on material wealth down here. Focus on what you're going to. Okay? And finally, the last verse in our study tonight is verse 17. And that is, a bowl of vegetables with someone you love is better than a steak with someone you hate. Now, in the King James, it translates as better herbs than with a well-fed ox. Okay? A well-fed ox. And if we were to modernize that, it would read something like this. Beans and rice with someone you love is better than Iowa corn-fed beefsteak with somebody you hate. Right? And bottom line here is just trying to get us to understand what true value, what true riches are. We think it's the new car, the fancy house, the fancy clothes. And what it really is a happy heart and someone to share it with that loves you the way you love them. You know, one of the greatest themes in moviedom is the rich guy who can't find somebody who loves him for who he is, and they're always worried about, well, do you love me for my money? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's kind of what this is saying, right? Is don't get envious of wealth here. Don't get envious of the world's knowledge, but rather go to God, go to the source of all wisdom and knowledge, and take that in. Okay, so next week